The Predator's Dilemma. Dr. Sarah Chen pressed her face against the viewport of the transport shuttle, watching Nexus Station grow larger against the backdrop of swirling nebula clouds. The research station looked small and fragile in the vast emptiness of space, its metal corridors barely visible as thin lines against the cosmic darkness. This was her first assignment beyond Earth's solar system, and despite 3 years of xenobiology training, nothing had prepared her for the reality of deep space. The shuttle docked with a gentle bump that made Sarah's stomach lurch. She gathered her research equipment and stepped into the station's main corridor, where the artificial gravity felt slightly heavier than Earth normal. The air carried strange sense of recycled atmosphere and alien technologies that made her nose wrinkle. Commander Thex, the station's Saurian leader, greeted her with what passed for a smile among his reptilian species. His scales were a deep green color, and his yellow eyes held the calculating intelligence that made Saurians excellent administrators. "Welcome to Nexus Station, Dr. Chen. I trust your journey was comfortable." Sarah nodded, adjusting the strap of her equipment bag. "Thank you, Commander. I'm excited to begin working with the specimens you've collected." Thex's expression darkened slightly. "Before we proceed to your laboratory, there is something you must understand about this station. We house dangerous entities here, creatures that most species would never dare to study. Your human tendency toward curiosity and compassion could prove fatal if not properly controlled." They walked through corridors lined with reinforced viewing windows. Behind each window, Sarah glimpsed alien creatures she had only seen in textbooks. Some were beautiful, with crystalline formations that caught the light like living jewels. Others were clearly predatory, with sharp teeth and aggressive movements that made her step back instinctively. "The most dangerous specimen we house," Thex continued, "is in the maximum security section. A Zephyrian warrior captured during the border conflicts. His species is considered the apex predator of known space. They are born killers, incapable of mercy or compassion. Even wounded and contained, he remains extraordinarily dangerous." Sarah had read about Zephyrians in her xenobiology courses. They were humanoid but larger than humans, with enhanced strength, speed, and reflexes that made them nearly unstoppable in combat. Their homeworld was a harsh place that bred only the strongest survivors. Most importantly, they were believed to be incapable of forming emotional bonds with other species. "Why do you keep him here instead of a military prison?" Sarah asked, as they entered her assigned laboratory. Thex activated several holographic displays showing the station's layout and security protocols. "He possesses unique biological adaptations that could advance our understanding of genetic enhancement. However, every researcher who has attempted to study him has either fled in terror or requested immediate transfer. Perhaps human stubbornness will succeed where others have failed." The laboratory was impressive, filled with advanced equipment for genetic analysis and biological research. Sarah spent the next several hours familiarizing herself with the alien technology, making notes about the specimens she would be studying. Most were relatively harmless creatures from peaceful worlds, but she found herself curious about the mysterious Zephyrian warrior. That evening, as Sarah reviewed her research files, the station's emergency alarms began blaring. Red lights flashed throughout the corridors, and automated voices announced a containment breach in the biology section. Sarah grabbed her emergency kit and rushed toward the source of the alarm, her training overriding her fear. The biology section was in chaos. Several specimen containers had been damaged, releasing creatures that were now loose in the corridors. Sarah saw research staff fleeing in panic as small but aggressive alien creatures scurried across the floors and walls. The containment breach had been caused by a power fluctuation that had weakened the magnetic locks on several specimen chambers. As Sarah worked to recapture some of the smaller creatures, she heard a sound that made her blood freeze. It was a low growl, deep and threatening, coming from the direction of the maximum security section. Through the smoke and flashing emergency lights, she saw a massive figure moving with deadly grace down the corridor. The Zephyrian had escaped. The creature was even more imposing than she had imagined. Standing nearly 8 feet tall, his humanoid form was covered in natural armor-like skin that appeared both flexible and incredibly tough. His face was angular and predatory, with eyes that glowed a fierce amber color in the emergency lighting. Most terrifying of all, he moved with the fluid precision of a born hunter. But as Sarah watched, she noticed something wrong. The Zephyrian was favoring his left side, and dark fluid dripped from a wound on his arm. The containment breach had injured him, yet he was still moving with purpose through the chaos. Sarah made a decision that would have seemed insane to anyone else on the station. Instead of running or calling for security, she approached the wounded alien. Her medical training told her that even a creature as tough as a Zephyrian could die from severe blood loss. "You're hurt," she called out, keeping her voice calm and steady. "I can help you." The Zephyrian spun toward her with lightning speed, his amber eyes focusing on her small human form with predatory intensity. For a moment, Sarah thought she had made a fatal mistake. This creature could kill her without even trying. But something unexpected happened. The Zephyrian tilted his head, studying her with what seemed like curiosity rather than aggression. When he spoke, his voice was deep and carried a strange accent, but his English was perfect. "You are not running," he observed. "Why?" Sarah held up her medical kit, keeping her movement slow and non-threatening. "Because you're bleeding, and I took an oath to help injured beings regardless of species. Will you let me treat your wound?" The question seemed to confuse the Zephyrian. He looked down at his injured arm, then back at Sarah. Around them, the chaos of the containment breach continued, but in this moment, they existed in a bubble of strange calm. "My name is Korath," he said finally. "I am called the Shadow Death by my enemies. Why would you help one such as me?" Sarah stepped closer, noting that Korath made no aggressive moves despite her proximity. "My name is Dr. Sarah Chen, and I help injured beings because it's the right thing to do. May I examine your wound?" For several long seconds, Korath studied her face as if trying to solve a complex puzzle. Finally, he extended his injured arm toward her. Sarah carefully examined the wound, noting that it was deeper than she had initially thought. The injury had been caused by shrapnel from the containment breach, and without treatment, infection could set in. As Sarah worked to clean and bandage the wound, she became aware that Korath was watching her intently. His amber eyes tracked every movement of her hands, but there was no threat in his gaze. Instead, he seemed genuinely puzzled by her actions. "Your species confuses me," Korath said as Sarah applied a healing gel to his wound. "I have studied humans through captured communications and prisoner interrogations. You are described as weak, fragile creatures driven by emotion rather than logic. Yet you show no fear of me." Sarah focused on her work, wrapping the wound with synthetic bandages. "Maybe the descriptions you heard were incomplete. Yes, humans can be emotional and fragile compared to species like yours, but we're also capable of compassion, creativity, and courage when it matters." The wound properly treated, Sarah stepped back to assess her work. The bandage would hold, and the healing gel would prevent infection while promoting rapid tissue regeneration. Korath flexed his arm experimentally, testing the repair. "You have skill," he acknowledged. "But more than that, you have shown mercy to one who has never known it. This is unexpected." Before Sarah could respond, the sound of heavy footsteps echoed through the corridor. Commander Thex appeared with a squad of security personnel, all carrying energy weapons aimed at Korath. The Zephyrian tensed, his hand moving instinctively toward where a weapon would normally hang. "Dr. Chen, step away from the prisoner immediately," Thex commanded. "That creature is extremely dangerous." Sarah positioned herself between the security team and Korath, a move that surprised everyone present. "He's injured, and I'm treating him. There's no need for weapons." "That thing is a killer," one of the security guards protested. "It's destroyed entire colonies." Sarah felt Korath stiffen behind her, and she sensed the pain that the accusation caused him. Without thinking, she turned to face him directly. "Is that true?" Korath's amber eyes met hers, and she saw something she hadn't expected to find. In the galaxy's most feared predator, she saw guilt, regret, and a deep weariness that spoke of terrible experiences. "Yes," Korath said quietly. "I have killed. I have destroyed. I am what they say I am." "But that's not all you are," Sarah replied, surprising herself with her certainty. I've seen how you move, how you think. You could have killed me easily when I approached you, but you didn't. You let me help you. That tells me there's more to you than just a weapon. The security team remained tense, waiting for orders from Commander Thex. The Saurian leader studied the scene before him with calculating eyes, clearly trying to decide whether Sarah's approach was brilliant or suicidal. Suddenly, new alarms began sounding throughout the station. These were different from the containment breach warnings, deeper and more urgent. Through the station's communication system, a panicked voice announced the discovery that would change everything. Commander Thex to the bridge immediately. We have detected an unknown fleet approaching our position. Energy signatures are unlike anything in our databases. Estimated time to arrival, 4 hours. Korath's entire demeanor changed at this announcement. His amber eyes widened with what looked like recognition and fear. The hive, he whispered, and Sarah could hear genuine terror in his voice. What's the hive? Sarah asked, but before Korath could answer, Commander Thex was issuing orders. All personnel to battle stations. Dr. Chen, escort the prisoner back to his containment cell immediately. But Korath shook his head, his expression grim. Containment will not matter if the hive has found this place. They will consume everything, convert all life to serve their hunger. You do not understand what approaches. Sarah looked between Korath and the security team, sensing that they were all about to face something far worse than a simple containment breach. The wounded Zephyrian warrior seemed genuinely afraid, and if something could frighten the galaxy's most dangerous predator, what hope did any of them have? The station shuddered slightly as defensive systems came online, but Sarah had the sinking feeling that their preparations would not be enough for what was coming. She had come to Nexus Station to study alien life forms, but instead, she had found herself at the center of a crisis that could determine the fate of everyone aboard. As emergency teams rushed past them in the corridor, Sarah made another decision. That would have seemed impossible just hours earlier. She looked directly at Korath and asked, "Will you help us?" The question hung in the air between them, loaded with implications that neither fully understood yet. Around them, the station prepared for battle against an unknown enemy, while in the growing darkness of space, something ancient and hungry approached with deadly intent. When Predators Unite 4 hours proved to be an optimistic estimate, the unknown fleet arrived at Nexus Station in half that time, emerging from hyperspace with a silence that was somehow more terrifying than any battle cry. Sarah stood in the station's command center, watching the main display screen with growing horror as dozens of organic-looking ships took positions around the station. The vessels were unlike anything in the Galactic databases. They appeared to be grown rather than built, with smooth, flowing surfaces that pulsed with bioluminescent patterns. Most disturbing of all, they seemed to be alive, breathing in the vacuum of space like massive organisms. Commander Thex studied the tactical displays with his reptilian equivalent of a frown. They're not responding to any communication attempts. Energy readings are off the charts, but we can't identify their weapon systems. Korath stood near the command center's entrance, still technically under guard, but no longer restrained. His presence made most of the crew nervous, but Sarah had convinced Thex that they needed every advantage they could get. The Zephyrian warrior studied the alien ships with intense concentration. They do not use weapons as you understand them, Korath said, his deep voice carrying across the command center. The hive does not destroy for conquest or resources. They consume for transformation. Those ships are not vessels. They are organisms designed to process other life forms. Process how? Sarah asked, though she dreaded the answer. Korath's amber eyes met hers with grim certainty. They will board this station and capture every living being they can find. The captured will be taken to conversion chambers where their biological and mental essence will be absorbed into the hive consciousness. What remains becomes another drone in their collective. The implication sent a chill through everyone in the command center. This wasn't a battle they could win through conventional means. The hive wasn't interested in negotiations or surrender, only in adding new minds and bodies to their collective consciousness. How do you know so much about them? Commander Thex demanded. Korath was quiet for a long moment, and Sarah could see old pain resurface in his expression. Because they destroyed my homeworld. I am one of the few Zephyrians who escaped their first expansion wave 20 years ago. Since then, I have dedicated my life to finding ways to fight them. The revelation struck everyone silent. Sarah realized that Korath's reputation as a destroyer might have a very different origin than she had assumed. You've been hunting them? I have been preparing, Korath corrected. Learning their patterns, studying their weaknesses, gathering the resources needed to make a stand. I allowed myself to be captured by the Galactic Council forces because I knew the Hive would eventually track me here. This station's research capabilities were what I needed. Before anyone could respond to this admission, the station's hull began to vibrate with a low, rhythmic pulsing. Through the viewports, they could see tendrils of organic material extending from the Hive ships toward the station's outer hull. The tendrils moved with purpose, seeking docking ports and weak points in the station's defenses. They're beginning the boarding process, Korath announced. Your defensive systems will not stop them. The Hive's organisms can adapt to energy weapons within minutes of exposure. Commander Thex activated the station's internal communication system. All personnel prepare for boarding action, seal all non-essential sections, and retreat to designated safe zones. But Korath shook his head grimly. There are no safe zones from the Hive. They will find everyone eventually. Sarah watched the organic tendrils boring through the station's hull with growing desperation. She had come to study alien life, but she was about to become part of an alien collective consciousness unless they found a solution fast. Her scientific mind raced through possibilities, searching for any advantage they might have. Wait, she said suddenly, an idea forming. You said they adapt to energy weapons. Quickly, but what about biological agents? I've been studying the specimens in this station's laboratories. Some of them produce toxins that affect nervous systems. Korath turned to her with sudden interest. Explain. Sarah accessed her research files on a nearby terminal, pulling up data on various creatures housed in the station's biology section. Several species produce neurotoxins that disrupt synaptic connections. If the Hive operates through some kind of collective neural network, these toxins might be able to interfere with their coordination. It is possible, Korath agreed, studying her research data. But the delivery system would need to be precisely calibrated. Too little concentration and they will adapt before it takes effect. Too much and it might not spread through their collective quickly enough. The station shuddered as the Hive organisms completed their connection to the hull. Through the internal sensors, they could see the first boarding pods breaking through into the outer corridors. The pods split open like massive flowers, releasing creatures that defied easy description. The Hive drones were humanoid in basic shape but clearly modified for their function. Their skin had a metallic sheen, and their eyes glowed with the same bioluminescent patterns as their ships. They moved with perfect coordination, flowing through the station's corridors like components of a single organism. How long do we have? Sarah asked as she rapidly calculated toxin concentrations. Minutes, Korath replied. But I may be able to buy us more time. He turned to Commander Thex with an expression that was almost apologetic. I need access to the station's power core. What I'm planning will likely destroy significant portions of the station. Thex's yellow eyes narrowed. What exactly are you planning? Instead of answering directly, Korath looked at Sarah. Your plan with the neurotoxins has merit, but we need a way to distribute them throughout their collective network simultaneously. The station's environmental systems could serve as a delivery mechanism, but only if we can force the Hive to breathe the station's atmosphere. Sarah understood immediately. You want to decompress sections of the station to force them to seal their boarding tunnels, then flood the sealed areas with the toxin mixture. Precisely. But the power requirements for such an operation will overload the station's systems. It is likely a one-way mission. The implications hung heavy in the command center. They were essentially planning to sacrifice the station and possibly themselves to stop the Hive advance. But as reports came in of Hive drones systematically working their way through the station's levels, it became clear they had few alternatives. I'll need 20 minutes to synthesize enough neurotoxin, Sarah said, already moving toward the laboratory sections. I can give you 15, Korath replied, then addressed the security team that had been guarding him. I need weapons and access to the station's central corridors. I'm going to slow down their advance. Commander Thex made a decision that surprised everyone, including himself. Give him what he needs. As the security team reluctantly provided Korath with energy weapons and explosive charges, Sarah ran through the station's corridors toward her laboratory. Behind her, she could hear the sounds of battle beginning as Korath engaged the first wave of Hive drones. The Zephyrian warrior moved through the station's corridors like a force of nature. His enhanced reflexes and combat training, combined with intimate knowledge of Hive tactics, made him devastatingly effective against the boarding parties. Sarah caught glimpses of him through security monitors as she worked in her laboratory, synthesizing neurotoxins from the alien specimens. Korath fought with a precision that was beautiful and terrible to watch. He used the station's tight corridors to his advantage, preventing the Hive drones from overwhelming him with numbers. His energy weapons found weak points in their defenses, while his explosive charges collapsed sections of corridor to slow their advance. But Sarah could see that even a warrior of Korath's caliber couldn't hold them off indefinitely. The Hive drones showed no fear, no hesitation, and no concern for casualties. They continued pressing forward with mechanical determination, adapting their tactics with each encounter. Sarah worked frantically to complete her toxin synthesis, combining compounds from 3 different alien species to create a neurological agent that she hoped would disrupt the Hive's collective consciousness. The calculations had to be perfect, the mixture precisely balanced to achieve maximum effect. Through the laboratory's communication system, she heard Korath's voice calling from the central corridor. Dr. Chen, how much longer? 5 more minutes, she called back, watching the synthesizer complete its work. I can give you 3, Korath replied, and Sarah could hear the strain in his voice. She abandoned the normal safety protocols and began manually combining the final compounds, trusting her instincts and training to create the neurotoxin mixture they needed. Behind her, the laboratory's emergency seals activated as Hive drones reached the biology section. Sarah completed the synthesis just as the laboratory doors began to buckle under assault from the Hive organisms. She grabbed the containers of neurotoxin and ran toward the station's environmental control center, where Korath was waiting with the power core modifications complete. The Zephyrian warrior was wounded again, with new cuts and burns from his running battle with the Hive forces. But his amber eyes burned with determination as he helped Sarah connect the toxin containers to the station's atmospheric systems. Once we activate this, Korath warned, there will be no going back. The power surge will destroy much of the station, and we'll be trapped in the central sections. Sarah nodded, understanding the sacrifice they were making. Will it work? I believe so. Your research shows that the neurotoxin should disrupt their collective consciousness within minutes of exposure, but we must ensure they breathe it. Korath initiated the power surge that would decompress the station's outer sections, while simultaneously flooding the Hive organisms with neurotoxin-laced atmosphere. The station's lights flickered and dimmed as massive amounts of energy flowed through systems never designed for such loads. Through the security monitors, they watched as the Hive drones suddenly stopped their coordinated advance. The neurotoxin was taking effect, disrupting the collective network that allowed them to function as a single organism. Individual drones began moving erratically, their perfect coordination dissolving into confusion. But the victory came at a cost. The power surge had damaged critical systems throughout the station, and secondary explosions were beginning to rock the central sections. Sarah and Korath found themselves trapped in the environmental control center as corridors collapsed around them. Did we stop them? Sarah asked as emergency lighting flickered on. Korath monitored the sensor readings with grim satisfaction. The boarding parties have been neutralized, but the Hive ships are withdrawing. They will report our resistance methods to their collective. Next time, they will be prepared. Next time? The Hive learns from every encounter. They will adapt to counter our neurotoxin approach and return with new strategies. But we have bought time for the galaxy to prepare. As rescue teams finally reached their position hours later, Sarah reflected on the unlikely alliance that had saved the station. She had approached a wounded predator with compassion, and that simple act of mercy had forged a bond that proved stronger than species differences or fearsome reputations. Commander Thex found them in the debris of the Environmental Control Center, both injured but alive. The Saurian leader looked at Korath with new respect. The Galactic Council will need to hear about this threat. Will you testify about the hive? Korath looked at Sarah, who nodded encouragingly. I will do what is necessary to protect the galaxy from this threat, but I cannot do it alone. Sarah made another decision that would have seemed impossible when she first arrived at the station. You won't be alone. The galaxy needs to understand both the threat we face and the allies we have. I'll speak for you to the Council. The Zephyrian, warrior who had been feared across the galaxy, looked at the small human scientist who had shown him kindness when no one else would. In that moment, a partnership was born that would reshape how the galaxy viewed both species. As they were taken to the medical bay for treatment, Sarah realized that her first deep space assignment had taught her something profound about the nature of courage, compassion, and the unexpected bonds that can form between the most unlikely allies. The galaxy's most feared predator had become her protector, and together they had faced down an ancient evil that threatened all life. The story of Dr. Sarah Chen and Korath would spread throughout the galaxy, inspiring others to look beyond species prejudices and find strength in unexpected alliances. But for now, they were simply two beings who had found trust and loyalty in the darkest of circumstances, proving that sometimes the greatest victories come not from strength alone, but from the courage to extend compassion to those who need it most.